Hello everyone, this is a new episode of Russian Arc, and we can call it a special report from Nizhny Novgorod, a wonderful ancient Russian city, the capital of Privolzhye macro-region. Today with my colleague Angelika Karetkina, we're here at a very special event.
We came to Nizhny Novgorod to take part in Global Digital Forum.
So we are now in the relaxed conversation zone of the forum, and we're joined by our great friend Pepe Escobar. Hello.
Such a pleasure to be with you both. Come on, you're my brothers and sisters.
Pepe, share your vision, share your input on this event. You visit a lot of international events, both in Russia, in other countries. What do you see and feel here?
Wow, it's very, very important. I was doing a small sort of mini advert for the Brazilians, trying to explain to them in 2 or 3 minutes why a forum like this is so important and coming before BRICS in Rio. BRICS in Rio is going to be 1 month from now, roughly. And what we are discussing here, which is everything involving, let's say, a global alternative media network, which is something to be built step by step, very complicated. Fact-checking, anti-fake news mechanisms, trying to move the discourse from Silicon Valley platforms to global South platforms, establishing new paradigms of how to deal with media and how to educate people. Everything is being discussed at this forum in this beautiful city and in this beautiful building, which used to be a caravanserai before. You know, you have people coming from the Arctic or from India to do trade here. Fantastic place. So that's why it's so important. And I'm really glad that a great deal of the global South is here, especially our friends from Africa. Not as many from Latin America as it should, but this is just the beginning, right? And from South Asia, the people from South Asia as well, all over Eurasia. So very, very important. And obviously, it's so important that there's not probably not a single comma about it in Western mainstream media.
The main topic of this forum is IT technologies.
Yes.
And we lived in a world where IT used to be the Western-dominated sphere. Is it now?
Not anymore. China is proving it. And Russia has all the potential to keep going. Ideally, from, let's say, an auspicious Chinese-style point of view, there should be more high-tech IT cooperation between Russia and China, because this would immediately reflect on the BRICS table. Maybe you are in the beginning. I talked to some Americans and Russians from the industry, IT industry here. They said, look, at the moment the IT industry in Russia is more or less stagnated. It's not growing at the moment. Sanctions, of course, big part of the picture. But the Chinese are exploding. So, you know, in my mind, just to give all of you a very simple example, why don't we have, for instance, Huawei and Yandex starting to collaborate in projects? This is something that I would like to pose to people at Yandex in Moscow, and then talk to people at Huawei in Shanghai or Shenzhen, you know. It's something to develop bilaterally and then getting into BRICS as well. Because the drivers of BRICS, as we know, are Russia and China. These are the top 2 BRICS. The other ones are like, you know, side dishes. So if it doesn't come from Russia and China, no major initiative inside BRICS will develop.
Pepe, today in the morning we had an interesting discussion, panel discussion about bloggers and their influence in international communication. So Do you think that we see right now the end of the old global world?
The global information war? Oh, wow. I've been into it since forever. I am an old dinosaur in this business. When I started in journalism, we were in a big newsroom in a big newspaper with cables falling from the roof with old typewriters. This is how it was in the early 80s, just to give you an idea. And then we translated. Then we exactly we made the transition towards very, very slow computer monitors, then to fax. When I started as a foreign correspondent, I used to send telexes. I used to go to an office, it could be in Tokyo or in London, sit there, type the telex, and then you have that string, and you have to send, like 10,000 years ago. And then the first small Toshiba laptops, which were very, very dumb, no images, etc. So this is, when you talk about this to young generations, they don't even know what we're talking about. Yeah. So a few of us, we followed the whole process all the way to people, for instance, we have instant bloggers who, whatever they say on the net, 5 minutes later, 10 million people watched it. This is absolutely unimaginable, only a few years ago. So it's the industry, the old industry is already dead, disappeared completely. The new industry nowadays, it's, I would say, a small-scale industry everywhere. Each blogger or vlogger or podcaster now, he can run a micro-empire of information. If he's good, if he has a strong following, and if he cares about his audience, if he doesn't spew out collections of fake news, he can be a mini empire in himself. So that's an enormous social responsibility for bloggers and vloggers as well. So they have to keep that in mind. And they have to respect their audience. They have to listen to their audience. But at least that old industry, which profited basically owners of big newspapers or TV chains and advertisers. It didn't profit the audience at all. It was a concentration of information. And now we have total dissemination of information. It's different. Now the social responsibility is with this new generation of bloggers, Instagrammers, vloggers, influencers, whatever.
And thanks to that new possibilities and
new possibilities
of bloggers, we could fight with Western propaganda, right?
Yes. From the point of view of the global South, absolutely. The global North, they lost the monopoly of information. For instance, for my generation, we grew up, we had to rely on a big news, usually a big national newspaper. For instance, in France, there were 2. In Italy, there were 2. In England, there were 2 or 3. In the US, there were 2. And that's it. So they monopolized printed information. And on TV, it was even worse. For instance, if you were in Britain, it was the BBC and nothing else. If you were in France, there were 2 channels, essentially, and nothing else. So at least now it's diffuse, but very, very complicated because they're still relatively powerful. And the problem is the news agencies. And the top 3 news agencies are Western. So it's up to the global South. This should come from Russia. Under sanctions is very hard. China is complicated because China information is segregated and it's a pyramid. It comes from the top. So there are very few centers of alternative information, let's say public-private in China. But it can come from South America, it can come from Africa, it can come from other parts of Asia. A more disseminated and then little by little more integrated form of let's say, a global South news agency, which is something that we should start thinking in these terms. Why can't we build an alternative to Reuters, AP, and AFP? It's not that difficult. But of course, it will involve a lot of players. It has to be public and private, preferably a mix of both, and with a global reach and in several languages. Then their monopoly will disappear as well. I think we're starting now this process.
You witnessed the whole transformation of information from printed into digital.
Into digital,
and
yes.
you were successful in all the epochs of media. What do you see is coming next? What will be the next step in media technology and in approaches to media, judging by your previous experience?
It's hard to tell, Andrey, because it will be probably a refinement of blogging, vlogging, and let's say a more multinational approach to news on the digital sphere, and not falling into the trap of AI, but AI controlled by Silicon Valley. So let's think about a possibility. You use an equivalent of DeepSeek, maybe the next DeepSeek, so you can trust the algorithm in terms of if you're doing a research, you can trust the algorithm. Algorithms depend on who writes the code. So that's the thing. If we have independent-minded scientists and journalists writing code, a community we can trust. So they can be trusted in Nigeria, and they can be trusted in Russia, and they can be trusted in Vietnam. That's very, very hard, but this would be the ideal way to go, which in parallel to this notion of a global news agency, let's say the post-Reuters environment, you know. We are still in the beginning. And example, you have an alternative internet, which we're going to need. I was thinking in terms of the BRICS net, let's put it this way. And okay, the smartphones and the laptops, what is the operating system that we're gonna have access to this BRICS net? It cannot be Google.
Or Windows.
Or Windows, it has to be something completely different. Example, why not the Chinese Harmony OS system? So the Chinese, with their idea of community of shared development for mankind, they can offer Harmony X for free all over the world, and we run the BRICS net on Harmony X. It's an example, right? So I think there are possibilities. We need everything completely different from, okay, we are reading a Reuters report on Google Chrome. This is how the West works. So the next step would be, we are reading a BRICS net investigation on Harmony X Global in several languages. So this is the transition that we need now. From Silicon Valley dominated and old school Western dominated dissemination of information to global South multilateral spread of information.
What will be the role of values in the coming years? On the one hand, there is a lot of conversation about technology.
No, that's a very serious question.
But still, people fight and die for values, not for technologies. You've witnessed it yourself in Donbass.
I witnessed it myself with you in Donbass. I was extremely impressed by it. And because I am a nomad, of course, I'm comparing to other parts of the world, like Shiites, like the Yemenis. When you go to Yemen, you totally understand what they're doing because it's not very much different from what you see in Donbass, you know. So it will be, I think it will be more and more stronger than it is today, because nowadays the strategy of, let's put it this way, the empire of chaos, as I call them, is divide and rule. Divide and rule basically means our values, Western civilization, and nobody else's. And we are against the values of Africans, Russians, Chinese, Persians, you name it. Now it's different. The Global South together is different strong values from different cultures. It's the meaning of dialogue of civilizations. That's it. You respect the values of other strong civilizations and cultures, which is something that the West never did. So if you look at the story of the real apex of Western civilization is 240, 250 years, not much more than that, you know. Until the middle of the 17th century, it was essentially India and China were the most powerful cultures and civilizations in the world, and markets, in fact. The thing is, they were strong enough because they conquered. Colonialism became predominant on the barrel of a gun, as our friend Mao used to say. Not anymore. Because now the Chinese and the Russians, they have better guns than the West. If we come to that, you know. So they don't have the military predominance anymore. They don't have cultural, they have soft power predominance, which is different than culture. And the old, I would say, the sublime parts of Western culture that led to the Renaissance, to the Enlightenment and all that, these values are dead in Europe by these new European political elites. You have individual citizens in individual European nations, like Italians or French or Germans, that they remember Schopenhauer, Montaigne, Leonardo da Vinci and all that, but this is very, the superstructure, the political superstructure, they don't care about this anymore. They only care about control and losing the control that they used to have. That's why they are so paranoid, because they can see control slipping away from them everywhere. And that's how they're getting more and more dangerous. So this is all changing. But if we can dream a little bit, the possibility that we can have different cultures and different civilizations with their modus operandi and with their operating systems collaborating in terms of explaining what's going on to different populations with different values, different cultures, different levels of education, etc. It's great. It's something that it didn't happen for the past 250, 300 years.
Pepe, do you think that BRICS countries could create an alternative to famous world news agencies?
Now, this is part of the current debate. It's part of what we are debating here, obviously. I hope they will talk about this at the BRICS in Rio next month. I'm not betting on it. It's too early, probably. But an element of BRICS that is great is what I learned last year. I spent a lot of time in Russia last year. It's the idea of BRICS as a laboratory, testing stuff. So sooner or later, they're going to start, okay, let's start testing a new system of spreading information. So sooner or later, this will arrive at the BRICS table. But when it gets there, how you're going to coordinate, for instance, Russia and China, which think alike more or less in terms of information, with India or the United Arab Emirates, which is, you know, this is going to be very hard. But the BRICS partners, some of them are very important, and they are interested in decentralization of information. Example, Indonesia. Indonesia now is a full member of BRICS. The other Southeast Asians, Thailand and Malaysia, same thing. So there are some, I would say, reasons to be cheerful about it. But it's a long process, but it's starting now. And this forum is important because this forum is one of the starting points of this discussion.
Well, thank
Pepe,
you.
thank you for your input.
Thank you.
You've
My
been
pleasure.
fruitful as always, and
My
we're
pleasure,
so
my
glad to know
pleasure.
you.
Thank
and
you.
have
Thank
this
you,
pleasure
guys.
to talk to you.
Come on.
У нас важная панельная дискуссия. Я считаю, что действительно важная. Это влогеры, их значение в таком национальном общении, в диалоге, потому что именно эти люди сейчас являются альтернативой средствам массовой информации. Именно через них можно получить достоверную информацию о том, что происходит.
Все отмечают, что журналистика и блогинг, блогерское мастерство уже давно слились в нечто единое, и очень сложно найти вот эту грань, где заканчивается сегодня журналист и начинается блогер, и наоборот, где заканчивается блогер и начинается журналистика. Как военный корреспондент я, конечно, особо отмечаю важность присутствия не только средств массовой информации в зоне боевых действий, но и блогеров. Сейчас такая возможность есть. Я лично наблюдал, иногда даже мне доводилось лично сопровождать блогеров иностранцев. И я видел, насколько их аудитория больше доверяет конкретному человеку, чем абстрактному СМИ.
We have already bloggers who are on the European Union sanction list. There was a lot of initiatives that tried to bring a lot of bloggers in Telegram groups and so on. Each Telegram group with a lot of bloggers contains the risk that the West has a list of all the bloggers. It doesn't matter what content then they have, they will block them, they will censor them. Financing of bloggers, I was thinking very often about that, how it could work. First of all, and I don't know what bloggers think, because I don't depend on income from blogging, obviously, and most of the bloggers that we heard today, they are also not depending on the income for doing the blogging. But of course, we need maybe to depend on having the opportunities to make the content. Or we have to give them just a respect. That's already a lot, I think. I don't know exactly when we are creating a foundation or when we are creating a company, what kind of risk we have if we're doing that. Maybe if we do that, then the West will say, of course, that's something like, you know, Putin-sponsored organization.
But no evidence.
Yeah, no evidence. No evidence. They don't have evidence for me, and I will be maybe on there. Yes.
They can speak, but when it comes to the actual cases, they will need the real evidence, and there is none. They can speak as much as they want, and they always can contradict.
I agree to you. I'm two of my very good friends on the sanction list since 2 weeks. To be honest, next week and the end of the week, you will see a television about me. I will be the next on the sanction list. So the problem is, if they put me on a sanction list, I have no possibility to fight against it. A sanction list means, putting on a sanction list means taking a name, prosecute, and make a judgment in once, without any right to do anything. There is no lawyers involved. There is nothing I can do. Even I'm not allowed to take a lawyer if I'm on the sanction list. I'm not to pay for a lawyer. I'm not allowed to do anything then. So that means you're really without any rights. That's the risk. But okay, not everyone will come on a sanction list, obviously. That will not happen. But they will block all the channels. A very good friend of mine, she's from America, and she's Russian as well. Her channel was called Sasha Meets Russia. She started with a channel, and during 2 months has 500,000 Instagram followers. Gone. She started with another channel, 400,000 users. Gone. She started with YouTube. YouTube wrote her, you will never be allowed anymore to do anything in YouTube. And so on, and so on, and so on. So they are censoring, they are blocking. It's not about the problem you know, you cannot do something against, when you're fighting against YouTube or TikTok, you cannot win because they just say, you're breaking our guidelines, our community rules, whatever. If we can, and even if the rule does not exist, they put it to their guidelines. It doesn't matter to them. They have changed the guidelines for Russian and also content about Russia and about Ukraine at the very beginning of 2022. And we have to say, so hate speech and talking about violence is forbidden at YouTube, except when it comes to Ukraine. So that means Ukraine can talk in YouTube about violences of humanity and so on, about Russians, but not in the other way. They just do it. So that's the problem. Any foundation, everything condemning concerning that is highly risky for everyone who takes part.
Хочу напомнить эту картину. 22 года был такой случай, когда они бомбардировали банкомат. Вот видите, это взрослый мужчина, он потерял свою супругу прямо тут. А в то же самое время эта картина брали итальянские журналисты и написали, что якобы русские бомбили украинский Донец и погибли люди. А там вообще в России нет такой боеприпас, потому что Россия давно уже перестали использовать кассетный боеприпас. Не только там, и в Севастополе, помните, когда были бомбардировки, там они использовали запрещенный кассетный боеприпас. В Донецке чуть не каждый день они выбрасывают лепесток, который мин. Ну, это вообще нельзя по гражданскому, ну, всем международным правилам. Недавно видели, даже когда в Курской области, когда они случились, если кто-нибудь видели, они видели беременную женщину на машине, просто постреляли. А кто должен за ним говорить, если мы будем бояться, если будучи иностранным блогером? Да, я сейчас показываю, как в настоящей жизни в России. Но знаете, как скажу, что действительно меня болит сердце для этих людей. Мой ребенок родился 12 июня. Я верю, что это, наверное, какой-то знак, и мы его назвали Святославом, это День России. И после этого я понял, что как раз как на русском языке есть такое слово «чужих детей не бывает». Если я не буду говорить за моих детей, ну, за всех детей, значит, кто-нибудь не будет говорить за моих детей. А я хочу создавать такое место, что в будущем моих детей не будет стыдно, потому что я хочу его воспитать на русской культуре, на православной культуре, что он будет себя чувствовать русским, чтобы других людей его не указывали, что ты неправильный человек, Россия агрессор. И я хочу понимаю, что да, наша работа не так сильно много, но все равно, вот как раз мы со своей супругой только 4 руками мы создали канал, который уже у нас больше, чем почти 300 миллионов просмотров. И кроме того, нам больших СМИ у нас опубликовали. И я думаю, что если мы можем с 4 руками создавать, это только на русском языке, да? И почему я пока начал на русском языке, это тоже есть одной причиной. Потому что в западной стране живут очень много людей, которые я лично видел, которые болеют за Россию. Они просто, может быть, какое-то время переселенцы или за разные причины, судьбы, они находятся там. И как раз мы сами со супругой за границей были, как представитель русской культуры, нам каждый день пришлось отвечать, что там происходит.
So, dear friends, as you can see, today we're living in the world where decisions cannot be made only in one point of one continent, and all the world, all the countries, all the nations are now part of a global process of IT transformation.
And such events proves that Russia is not isolated. This country attracts many people from different countries of the world.
You are welcome to Russian Arc.
Welcome to Russian Arc.